as the Buckeyes continue preparing for their third game in the 2022 college football season here at Locked on Buckeyes, we're helping you prepare for the game as well. As this is Preview Thursday, we're going to help you learn all about the Toledo Rocket football team. They are 2-0. They have a former Buckeye on their team. What makes this team what they are? What's their story of the season? We're going to tell you all about that and then some right here today on Locked on Buckeyes.
You are Locked on Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked on Buckeyes, part of the Locked on Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Thursday, September 15th in the year 2022, and I want to thank you for making Locked on Buckeyes your first listen or first watch of every single day. On today's episode, we will be joined by Mr. Kyle Rowland. He covers Toledo football and basketball for the Toledo Blade. And Kyle and I have a fun time getting to know a lot about this football team and what makes them who they are. You would not have to wait very long for Kyle to talk about the talent that this Toledo football team has, especially on the defensive side of the ball, the front seven. He highlights that, and trust me, you will recognize one name, Dallas Gant, and hear about another guy who might be playing in the NFL next year. There's also a dual threat quarterback, which we go back and forth discussing what makes him who he is, and some other weapons the Rockets offense has that we will be seeing on full display on the weekend. Before we bring Kyle Rowland in, I want to make one quick statement and apologize for the audio yesterday. I realized while I was editing the episode that my microphone and my computer were not in sync. My computer switched to a different mic, which is why the sound did not sound like it does right now. That's one mistake. Not looking to make that again for the foreseeable future. This is what you'll hear right here on Locked on Buckeyes, the crisp, clear sound that you hear right now. So I'm going to back away, bring in Kyle Rowland, and help us learn all about the Toledo Rockets football team and what players will be on full display Saturday night in the shoe as the Buckeyes and the Rockets battle it out in prime time. And join us now here on Locked on Buckeyes, continuing our series, preview episodes every Thursday during the college football season. It is Kyle Rowland. Kyle covers college sports, Toledo football, and Toledo basketball for the Toledo Blade. Kyle, welcome to Locked on Buckeyes.
Happy to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, no problem at all. The Buckeyes have another night game. This will be their second night game in the first three games of the year. This is Toledo's third night game of the season as well. So it's a lot of night games that have been played so far. Toledo is 2-0. They were 7-6 last year, finished 5-3 in the conference. They're averaging 46 points a game, have only given up 10 points a game. I'm not telling you who they played. I'm just leaving the numbers out there for you. Kyle, what is the story of the Toledo football team so far this year?
I guess the theme is defense. A lot of hype about the defense in the offseason. They've lived up to it so far. The opponents haven't been good, but I do think there's something to be said for taking care of business, and especially in this day and age of college football, because, look at last Saturday. A&M, Notre Dame. It was a very topsy-turvy day where teams look past opponents. Toledo hasn't done that, so I'll give them credit for that. But they've got a very deep D line that is very productive. They've got, legitimate NFL draft picks there. A good linebacking core. Dallas Gant, former Buckeye, is obviously part of that. Offensively, they haven't really found their stride yet. They were much better against UMass. But it's kind of weird. Because of the opponent, you don't totally know what you have yet in Toledo. And you also don't know what you have in Toledo because they've been so inconsistent and underachieved the last few years. They think that they're one of the better teams in the MAC this season. They think they can get to Detroit and get to that MAC championship game. Next week actually will be kind of the truest kind of test of seeing how good they are. In the month of September, they go at San Diego State. It's a 50-50 game that'll kind of swing their schedule one way or the other. But they can also learn a lot in the environment they're going to find themselves in Saturday night in Columbus. Maybe for a half they can push Ohio State. I don't know if they can do it for 60 minutes, but they've risen to the occasion in the past in these types of games. Obviously, last year they could have beat Notre Dame, so could be an exciting game. We'll see.
And I kind of hinted at it earlier as Kyle, I asked him that question on purpose, describing the story of the season, because Toledo has won 37-0 week one. They won 55-10 last week, but they played Long Island and they played UMass, two teams that are not good football teams at all. Honestly, when I saw Long Island, I know LIU is not Liberty University. Liberty is LU. But I immediately went to, they added the I in the abbreviation for Liberty. So without even doing Google search, I assumed it was Liberty. I put Liberty down on my piece of paper, and then I said, wait, let me fact check this really quickly. Went and found it. They played Long Island University, an FCS school. A shutout's a shutout. I get who they're playing, whatever it is, a level. I got to give the defense credit like you did. Holding two teams combined to only 10 points on the whole season, that's really impressive to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. It kind of all starts with Desjuan Johnson, defensive tackle. He'll probably be, third round draft pick. He's got 4.5 tackles for loss already. That's top 10 nationally. I think he had 12.5 or 14.5 tackles for loss last year. I mean, he's a legit big-bodied force disruptor. An edge rusher, Jamal Hines, is another guy who's going to get drafted. Solid player. Deontay Johnson, linebacker, really good leader, kind of like the heart and soul in a way of the defense. Dallas Gant has been the leading tackler in both games so far, so obviously he's a monster addition. Secondary is solid too. I mean, all around, they're going to be probably a top 20, top 30 defense nationally this season. The front seven, I think if they were a Big Ten team, they'd be like the fourth or fifth best maybe in the Big Ten. Now, obviously, Ohio State can still manhandle the fourth and fifth best in the Big Ten, but that just kind of shows it's rare for MAC schools to have that kind of depth and those kind of NFL guys along the D line. So that's kind of the strength, and they've shown that so far.
Why do you think Toledo has such talent in being a MAC school this year at these positions?
Yeah, it kind of goes. They've had a lot of talent, since Jason Candle has been there. Deontay Johnson, the Steelers receiver, went to Toledo. Logan Woodside was a great quarterback in college. He's a backup in the NFL now. Some other skill guys, they are really good at developing their players. They're excellent at identifying them and then developing them. I always say, Ryan Day's amazing at his job. Mark Pantoni, those guys. They're unbelievable at their jobs. But to be able to do it at Toledo instead of just kind of offering 5 stars as you do at a place like Ohio State, to notice a 0 star and say, hey, I think we can really develop him into something. That's what they did with Deontay Johnson. That's what they've done with a lot of these defensive players. So I just think they have a really good eye for someone who will make an above average to really good player in the MAC, and kind of elevate them. And that's kind of what they've been able to do here these last few years. But the number of draft picks they had, that's why fans are, kind of giving Jason Campbell some criticism. Because we have all this talent, so why aren't we winning at the same level?
We are here with Kyle Rowland of the Toledo Blade. This is Locked on Buckeyes. Kyle, you mentioned Dallas Gant a couple times in the first few minutes of us discussing Toledo football right now. What have you seen from him so far through the early portion of this season?
He's been a huge addition on and off the field, I think. Regardless of how much he played or what his quality of play might have been at Ohio State, and some of it I definitely think is on the former defensive coaching staff. But Yeah, I mean, he didn't live up to the 4-star hype at Ohio State, but he was still in that program for 4 years. He saw what it takes to win at that level. He saw what kind of body you need, what the dedication, just all those types of intangible things. And now he's brought that to Toledo. He took kind of a hands-off, like kind of receded to the background approach in the spring and summer. He didn't want to come in and be like, hey, I played at Ohio State and I know what I'm talking about. He's a very mild-mannered, great leader. He's becoming more vocal now, but he immediately commanded respect in the locker room. I mean, he's from Toledo, which is one thing that helps. So he already knew some of the guys on the team. He's known Jason Candle for years since he was in high school. They have kept in touch ever since he was in high school. So that helped. There's just a familiarity. I mean, his family's here. His roommate that he lives with off campus at Toledo is a high school teammate. So all of those things have kind of factored in to him putting it together on the field, which 11 tackles in the opener, 9 tackles last week. He's just been a really high impact guy in the locker room and on the football field.
That's really good to hear, because I always wonder when college players are going from one team to another. Doesn't matter if you're going from a Toledo to an Ohio State or from an Ohio State to a Toledo. I don't really care. It's a new environment. It's new coaches, new school. There's a whole lot of things going on when you're between the ages of 18, 22, 23 that could impact your attitude, your demeanor, how you are during practice, during workouts, things of that nature. But I love hearing what you said about him, not just the numbers, but kind of the person he has been with for this program so far this year, because I feel like that's a good testament to kind of what I almost say Ryan Day specifically, but that when people leave, you might want to say, well, no, they're going to be a bad apple. Some guys might be a bad apple or this or that. No, it sounds like he's doing a pretty good job of not being a cancer in the locker room and also being good on the football field, which is a great combination.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Ryan Day had some nice things to say about Dallas Gant today. Yeah, I think all the way around. I mean, he's popular with his former teammates at Ohio State. He's very popular with his current teammates at Toledo.
That's great, man. That's great. You mentioned earlier the offense at Toledo, and I wrote it down. It said the offense has not found their stride. Now, I'll go back to just discuss the numbers that they're putting up as far as like points-wise. 55 points last week, 37 points the week before. I don't care who your opponent is. I kind of like when you're putting that many points on the board, but they haven't found their stride yet. Why do you say that?
Well, week 1, they play Long Island, who was horrendous in 2021. One of the worst teams in FCS. They're improved this year. I'll give them that. They got some transfers in. Their new head coach was an analyst at Alabama the last couple of years. So kind of like how I was saying about Dallas Gant, like obviously this guy knows what it takes to win and all that. But there's still a big talent disparity between Toledo and Long Island. And on the lines usually is where you see that. And Toledo's offensive line just wasn't bullying Long Island. They weren't rushing well. And I thought that's an area where you really got to kind of show out if you're Toledo. And it was a concern. People were upset about it after the opener. It improved drastically against UMass. And DeQuan Finn, dual threat quarterback, was, I don't like necessarily using the word unstoppable, but that's kind of what he was against UMass. They just really didn't have an answer for him running, really. So I thought they played a lot better against UMass. They ran it, I think, 6.5 yards per rush. But he still wasn't as accurate as he needed to be. He was under 50% actually. But they had 14 plays of at least 15 yards, which is obviously a winning recipe when you can put up that many chunk plays. That certainly will need to be part of the story on Saturday if they're to keep it close against Ohio State. But it's still just been a little uneven. 2016, 2017, 2018 under Jason Candle. Toledo had one of the best offenses in college football, consistently. He was known as one of the great young offensive minds in the game, and people thought he was going to get, some good Power 5 head coaching job, and it just hasn't really materialized. There've been quarterback injuries in recent years, which has played into it. But it's just, I don't know, there's just been an element that's been missing that was there in those early years.
Really interesting. I remember watching DeQuan Finn. It was some stuff that happened during the Long Island game, and he kind of reminded me of the transition in football. I was watching the Friday Night Lights TV show reruns on Netflix. I was like, okay, I didn't watch it when it first came out. I wanted to watch the TV show now. And you saw the transition from the quarterback, how it was your regular drop back, 3-step, 5-step drop, throw the ball out. And then all of a sudden, get the dual threat guy in who's not really as accurate of a passer, but he utilizes his legs to scramble and to get upfield. And so that's kind of what I realized when I noticed when I saw Daquan finish, like the accuracy might not be there in the MAC games or even now early in the season, but he's really athletic. And if you don't stop him, if you're not keying on your gaps and things of that nature, where you're supposed to be focused on each play, if you don't tackle properly, these arm tackles or leaning tackles, Daquan Finn can slip you and get upfield utilizing his legs. That's kind of what he reminds me of, more of a quarterback that might not be as accurate, but somebody that can skedaddle and get loose every now and then. Now, this week going to be a different test because he might want to be a little bit more accurate because the Rockets will need him to if they want to have even a chance at winning the game on Saturday.
Yeah, no, I thought you explained that well. And a lot of his runs are not designed runs either. I mean, it's him escaping pressure, which is another huge part of the offense. I mean, I mentioned, the run game not being well in that opener. I mean, if you look at Pro Football Focus, the pass blocking is the thing that's like a major issue for Toledo. So maybe that also contributes to his lack of accuracy. But it also, I mean, they need a dual threat guy back there. I mean, because he's under so much pressure, so that helps. But I mean, there's so many things that obviously has to go Toledo's way on Saturday. But one of them is, they got to have little wrinkles here and there offensively. I mean, Finn, I think, almost has to have 80, 90, 100 yards rushing, something like that, if they're going to be in this game, all the way to the end. And there's just a whole host of things. I mean, if you go back to the defensive side of the ball, when you have a MAC team playing Ohio State or a Big Ten program or whatever, just I think 50-50 plays just have to go their way virtually the whole time. If you've got the quarterback, sacked in the backfield, you got to take him to the ground. You can't let him get loose. Third down plays, I think, are huge. You got to get off the field if you're on defense. There's just so many things that are stacked against you. And the firepower of Ohio State's offense is just, it could be, 7-0 late in the second quarter. And it's like, oh, wow, this is a game. And then at the snap of a finger, it can be 21-0. It just takes these teams like one play to kind of change things and get their momentum. So the deck is obviously stacked against Toledo.
It is. When it comes to tackling on defense, I'll hop back to the offense here in a second, but it comes to simply the tackling and just something that these kids have been doing since they've been playing football, some since Little League, some started in middle school or high school, but tackling as a whole. Do you think you have been pleased with the tackling of Toledo's defense or not pleased at all with what you've seen through 2 games?
Yeah, no, very, very good. Very good. I mean, Vince Karras, the son of Larry Karras, longtime Mount Union coach, and then Vince was the head coach for a while. He came to Toledo in 2020 as a defensive coordinator. Prior to that, Toledo's defense was just abysmal, ranked in the hundreds. They've been ranked 35th the last 2 seasons. Both years Karras has been there. They'll be even better this year. Right now they're 4th nationally, I think. But, as we've said, not the best opponents. But they're going to stay up in that top 20 range, I think, throughout the season. Fundamentals, which tackling is like football 101, I would say.
Right.
Is a big part of that. He's just a kind of, a Midwestern defensive meat and potatoes football coach is I guess how I would describe him. And tackling has not been an issue. I think tackles for loss are something that obviously need to be key for Toledo on Saturday. They've done well in that category here in recent years. But I don't know. Ohio State's offensive line is really good, but I still think that Toledo has enough that they can create some issues for Ohio State with their pressure. But I don't know. It's just so hard to do that throughout the game. And they're obviously going to make adjustments in the second half and stuff like that. So we'll see.
On offense, we could talk about DeQuan Finn all day long. Who are some weapons that Toledo has on the offensive side of the ball?
So I do think they have weapons. They've got really solid offensive players. It reminds me of like the Notre Dame game a little bit in the sense of there was not a game breaker on that Notre Dame offense. Like there wasn't someone that really scared you of like, oh, like he could, like, I don't know. I thought that was one of the biggest things Ohio State had in their advantage. And I think Toledo's similar. I mean, Juwan Newton, wide receiver, is pretty solid, and he'll probably end up being one of the better wide receivers in the MAC, but I don't know if he's just going to blow by Ohio State secondary or anything like that. Demir Blankumsey is kind of a possession receiver. He might have like 14 catches already, actually, in the first 2 games. He's just kind of a security blanket, I would say, with DeQuan Finn. Jamal Turner, tight end, in the first game. He's kind of your prototype tight end now. Big, athletic, great hands, can run. He got injured, though, so we'll see about his availability. And then in the backfield, they've got kind of a stable of guys. Penny Boone is one of them. He's a transfer from Maryland, was actually the running back on DeQuan Finn's high school team, so now they're back together. Jaquez Stewart is kind of a hybrid guy who can catch the ball as well, shifty and fast, elusive, whatever. Micah Kelly is another guy who had been good in previous seasons, but has not really been too well in the first couple games. And Willie Shaw is a redshirt freshman who I think is probably their best running back and will end up getting a bulk of the carries as we get into October and November. But it helps that they have all those bodies because, I mean, they're going to need guys to be fresh against Ohio State because they're probably going to take a beating being tackled by Ohio State's players. So we'll see. I mean, they can probably create a little bit, running just because they have so many bodies. But again, O-line's got to play well. I think the biggest thing offensively is try to get the ball out of Finn's hand quickly. I don't know if that's like through screen passes or slants or what, but I think that's kind of their best strategy.
I'm right there with you. I was looking at the numbers, and I was kind of amazed that the leading rusher as far as yards and rushing touchdowns is the quarterback, DeQuan Finn. 138 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns, averages 7.3 yards per carry. Also he's tied for the lead in carries as well with 19. So that all sticks out to me because you talk about the stable of running backs, and the other running backs, their carry numbers are pretty similar. Then you have this guy who's a quarterback. Talk about how he's a dual threat earlier. Yeah. The stat sheet says he's a dual threat as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, prior to this season, Bryant Koback was the bell cow for the run game. I mean, he was, 1,500-yard rusher easily. Lot of touchdowns. He's on the practice squad now for the Vikings.
Okay.
But he was just Mr. Reliable. And they just don't have that this season. We'll see if it develops. I mean, if you can have, 3 guys that are semi-reliable and they all get, 500, 600 yards rushing on the season. I mean, at the end of the year, your rushing stats are similar. It's just that more players are getting it. But we'll see how doable that is. But you don't want to be at the end of the season and DeQuan Finn be your leading rusher. I just don't think that's a good strategy, especially if he's getting hit that many times as well. It just, as we've seen in recent years, it doesn't work well if your quarterback's getting punished.
Correct. Kyle, what are some last thoughts or comments you want to make, if you have any, about this game this weekend?
Well, I mean, I don't think Ohio State's going to be nervous that much in the second half. I mean, I think it could be close for a half, as I've said. But I do think it's interesting. I mean, Toledo they do have talent. This isn't Akron last year coming in, or, Miami, Ohio a few years ago got beat 76-5. I don't think that'll happen. Bowling Green, I think it was like 77-7, 5-10 years ago. I mean, that would be a bad sign for Toledo. That wouldn't be a good look for them. So I think they'll be able to score some touchdowns. I think that Ohio State won't score, 63 points or anything like that. And there's a history of Toledo rising up in these games. I mean, in the past 20 years, they've won at Penn State. They won at Michigan. They won at Arkansas. They've beaten Iowa State. They almost beat Ohio State in 2011. They almost should have beat Notre Dame last year, probably. I know all those teams weren't great at the time. Maybe Michigan was not good when Toledo beat them. Ohio State wasn't good in 2011. They still won the games, though. I mean, there's something to be said for that, or almost won the games. So I don't know. I mean, this is a game that, players from Ohio, which Toledo has a lot of them, have circled on their calendar. They're motivated. I mean, they're excited to play in Ohio and kind of say, oh, you should have recruited me. So, yeah, we'll see.
We will see. Kyle, can you tell everybody where they can follow you on Twitter and if they want to read some things from the Toledo side of things, where they can read some of that stuff leading up into this weekend's game?
Yeah, so, I mean, you just go to ToledoBlade.com. And then I'm on Twitter. It's very easy. It's just my name, Kyle Rowland. So at KYLEROWLAND.
And guys, you can follow me on Twitter at JStevens07. I really appreciate Kyle coming on and giving us all the information and then some about this weekend's game against the Toledo Rockets. Yes, it's a lesser opponent, but they have a lot of talent, and Kyle let us know all about that talent that Toledo has. Kyle Rowland, thanks for coming on Locked on Buckeyes. I really appreciate it.
No, it was a lot of fun. Thanks a lot.